NPC and IFBB Pro League Vice President, and this will be the Toronto Pro recap for Classic Physique, brought to you by New Tech. So in first place, we had Chen, and in second place, we had John. I think both of these guys brought awesome physiques to the stage. Overall, I thought they were decently close to each other, but for me, I thought it was a pretty clear win for Chen. However, I think it's funny looking at the pictures that were posted. Chen did not photograph well at all because his conditioning was definitely much better when seeing him in person than what it looks like here in the pictures. But still, we'll put these up and we'll go through pose by pose so I can let you know what I saw. So first up is the front double bicep pose. I think definitely a strong pose for both of these guys. For me, however, Branch's overall fullness and 3D look really made a difference when comparing both of these guys. John's arms and legs from the front are definitely very solid. However, I think Branch's arms and legs from the front were even better. Then we go into the torso. Obviously, both are showing a great V-taper into a nice small waist. But for me, the overall proportions and just the 3D look of Branch made this a pose that would go for Branch. And again, their conditioning, I thought, was very similar. For me, I think John was a touch more conditioned overall in a couple different places, but Branch's conditioning was actually very solid in person as well. So front double bicep, I gave to Branch. Chen and Branch are the same person. Those are his names. Next pose is the side chest pose. For me, John just doesn't do a good job of hitting this pose. He doesn't really get into the pose that well. You can basically see that he needs more size to his arms in this pose. Also, his shoulder could look better in this pose as well. Side leg, he could use a little bit more size to his hamstrings to balance out the side leg here. Then we go over to Branch. Branch was actually showing striations through the chest. His conditioning was still good. You saw the separation in his legs between his quad and his hamstring. He could still use a little bit more hamstrings in this side chest pose as well, but I think they've definitely come up. And the width and the fullness from shoulder to shoulder and through the chest definitely went to Branch here. So for me, this was another decently clear pose for Branch to make it 2 poses to 0. Next up was the back double bicep pose. Branch definitely improved his back, especially from the Olympia last year. He still needs more of that thickness and that 3D look to the back here. He can also use a little bit more width as well from the back. That will help him in this pose. I think his legs from the back definitely improved. You see the detail in the separation to his hamstrings. You see the width to his legs in the back. Obviously, adding a little bit more to the hamstrings is going to help that. But overall, I thought this pose looked very solid in person. For John, John's arms and shoulders looked good. His lower body looked very good in this pose, but the back itself was just not strong enough. It was very flat in person. He really doesn't have much thickness or much depth to his back there. And as you can see, he needs more width in this back double too. So both these guys, while their taper is awesome from the front, when you get to that back double, they are not displaying nearly the same amount of width. And for me, Branch was a good bit wider than John in person as well. And even though John was a little bit more conditioned, especially in the lower body, the back itself was flat and just didn't have that same pop. And the upper body didn't really compare that well with Branch's. Lower body, I thought between them was very comparable. So for me, this was a pose that went to Branch as well to make it 3 poses to 0. Next up was the abdominal and thigh pose. For me, again, this was a very close pose. Branch's quads from the front are very impressive. He shows good separation and obviously good width and fullness to the quads. His ab in midsection detail is good. However, the way he hits this pose, he doesn't really do a good job of still displaying great taper down into his midsection. And I feel like he could hit this pose definitely better than the way that he was hitting it at the show. John shows much better taper down into a nice conditioned and detailed midsection. And like I said, John's quads from the front looked very good at the show. Size-wise and just that fullness and 3D look, they're not really the same as Branch's, but they still were solid enough where in this pose, I think the overall conditioning and just the positioning and the way of this pose, I think in person, the way John was hitting it, he was still keeping the separation in the lines in his quads visible the whole time. Branch kind of flexes, then lets go, and fidgets around in this pose too much where you lose some of those lines and the detail and everything else. Plus, along with the missing taper as well, I gave this pose to John to make it 3 poses to 1. And then finally, favorite classic pose. I thought this was a very strong pose for Branch. He does a good job of displaying all of his strengths from the front, which obviously you see how strong his front double is. He does does his, variation of the half front double, half front lat spread here, showing off his upper and lower body very well. For John kind of twists around too much, and I don't think the angle that he hits this post for his variation of a front double / front lat spread is doing him quite the same amount of justice. Also, his left leg placement, when he turns it out too much, you see that you kind of lose that illusion of what his quads look like when they're more straight on, as you could see from his right leg. His quad looks a lot better when he has his legs positioned that way. When he turns that left leg to the side, we kind of see a big decrease in the size and the fullness and the thickness of the quad. And it's, he just doesn't have that same development that Branch has in both of his quads. Kind of raises it almost too high where you're losing the width to the lat. And it also really flattens his chest out on that side as well. So if I was him, I would play around with his favorite classic pose a little bit more and really try to make sure he's accentuating his strengths correctly. So for me, this was a pose that I gave to Branch to make it 4 poses to 1. I thought Branch was very impressive in person, really adding more to the back, especially from the back, and then just bringing in the condition just a little bit more will do well for him at the Olympia. For John, he needs to work on, like I said, arms from the side and the side chest pose, a little bit more hamstrings, in that side chest. Also posing as well, and then obviously the overall back from the back, but 2 very strong competitors. In third, we had Samuel. Samuel has a really, really nice, pretty physique, very wide, great size on his physique. What he really needs to do is bring in the conditioning much more, needs more detail to the midsection and the abs, can use a little bit more to his hamstrings to balance out his quads, and then also needs a little bit more thickness to his lower lats. In fourth, we had Dylan. Dylan, I think, brought a really good overall package. He's just very tall and has long limbs, so he really needs to fill out those limbs more, especially the legs, and then just adding more thickness and more overall size to his frame is going to really help him stand out more, but he has that great frame and that great structure where the potential is really there.